We have another question about Lunada Bay and Malaga Cove, more specifically. PVE's housing element required by Los Angeles County allows landlords in the Malaga Cove Plaza to convert their properties to homeless shelters if they wish. This has not happened to date. How worried are you that plaza landlords will choose to convert their properties to homeless shelters in the future? Mr. Kemps.
I'm very concerned not only about Malaga Cove, but I'm actually going to transition and hit the ADU issue because I think they're similar and they're combined. I know that our state is concerned about, homelessness and wants higher density, and I understand and I sympathize with those concerns. But I think the reality is that we want to control, via our CC&Rs and our deed restrictions, our own lots, and we don't want those things forced upon us. So I think that we need to have a more collaborative effort between the Homes Association and the City Council, and that the City Council needs to support and acknowledge not only the existence of that Homes Association, but be more collaborative with that association to keep those controls in place.
Thank you. Ms. King.
The housing element is something that the state requires every city to do. And what it means is that in its codes, it needs to have zoning so that certain types of dwellings can be built. It's a way to address California's housing crisis. So there have to be areas where certain types of density can be built, where emergency shelters can be built. The housing element does not require the city to actually build these things. It doesn't require them to partner with a developer to build these things. It doesn't require anyone to build these things. It just means if a developer wanted to come in and put an emergency shelter in Malaga Cove, that one could. That seems highly unlikely. There are no other resources there. There's no way, the land is very expensive, so it is not going to happen. And the consequences of not complying with the housing element are shown in the recent lawsuit by the state against Huntington Beach, where Huntington Beach removed some of the density requirements from its housing element, and the state has sued, meaning that they will have to comply.
Mr. McGowan.
Yes, I'm concerned about the coordination between the Homes Association and the City Council in trying to manage these types of issues. We've got CC&Rs that are deed restricted covenants in all of our land, and I don't think we have explored to the degree that I'd like to see all the defenses that we may be able to have and still comply with the state law, because I think we are somewhat of a unique community given the fact that we do have these deed restrictions.
Mr. McGowan.
I'm McGowan. McCarthy.
Mr. McCarthy, I'm looking at you.
I know, I saw
Calling me though.
Mr. McCarthy.
So if they moved a whole bunch of homeless, made shelters and moved the homeless in, that would help the parking problem in Malaga Cove. But I agree with Jennifer. The two big issues are cost and services. It's really expensive to rent down there, and services are nowhere near Palos Verdes. So I don't think that's going to be a possibility. I don't think.
Ms. Peterson.
There are certain state mandates we have to comply with. I mean, it would affect our funding if we don't, and like what Jennifer had mentioned, that the state is actually suing Huntington Beach, and there's no way the council wants to see us getting into another lawsuit, especially fighting somebody like the state who has so much more resources than we do. I'm not too worried about homeless shelters being developed in Malaga Cove just because it's owned by private residents. They are going to do what's beneficial for them, not so much for the homeless population. And as far as the AD is concerned, answering to Michael, these are other state mandates that we have to comply with. The city is trying to make it as restrictive as possible, working in conjunction with the Homes Association. So we have two watchdogs, basically, two watchdogs to make sure that our properties don't get developed as freely as the state would like. That's what the City Council has been doing, is protecting our right to own our property, to control our property.
Thank you. Ms. Losey?
So to answer the question, I'm probably not overly concerned about homeless shelters in Malaga Cove, kind of for the reasons people gave. But for this issue, this for me is where I am concerned is, just my observation over the last couple of years is yes, the state has mandates that cities are supposed to kind of make sure that they have their own municipal code to address. But I'm not convinced that we're getting the best advice and that we should as a city. And I sometimes observe that the city staff and perhaps the city attorney have gone bent over backwards to write a municipal code that the state of California would be very happy with, but is not necessarily in our best interest. And that's where I would probably push back and say, well, I think I'd like to see something less accommodating to the state and more with our residents in mind. And I'd like to see that equation change a little bit.
Okay, we begin.